So the Gemara is now going to analyze, if we only had Shein and we didn't have Ayin, or the other way around, we wouldn't have known the other way. So therefore it's not Sheik Suv Mabam Ke'echad, because each pasuk is coming to establish a different din. The Ikos Rachmana Shein, if the Torah only mentions Shein Havamina, Afilu, we're now on the top of Daf Chav Daled and Beis Shein Decholaf. These are baby teeth, and they switch throughout the development of the child. So are we going to say that if he knocks out a baby tooth from his Eved Katan, that the Eved goes free? And therefore the Torah is going to mention ayin here, so that we don't jump to the mistaken conclusion as far as Shein. It's therefore Kos Rachmana ayin. What did the Torah add and teach us with ayin? And that's going to be something called an Eiver She'ena Mischalif. Once it's removed from the body, it cannot regenerate. So the Ein HaEved, if it was knocked out, the Eved goes free. The Ikos Rachmana ayin, if the Torah did not mention a word about Shein, Hava Mina Ma Inyan Shenivra Imo. Ma Ayin Shenivra Imo. Ayin is something that he's born with. And from the moment of his birth, he is blessed with Ayin, with Re'iyah. Af Kol Shenivra Imo. So too, anything else, any other Aver that was born with him, Avol Shein Tzricha. Now, what does it mean, Shein Tzricha? It's not Nivra Imo. Nivra Imo means that it was in his body from the moment that he became an Eved. So in that sense, Shein is different than Ayin, because the mature tooth only breaks through later on in his life, not when he was born. And in that sense, it's different than Ayin, because the child from birth has Ayin, is Tzricha. So therefore, I need for the Torah to specify that the Eved goes out l'cheres gam b'shem v'gam b'ayin. And therefore, we don't apply the principle of Shnei Ksum Abam Kecharei Malam. On the contrary, Shein and Ayin now become the Binyan Av, from which we're going to derive all Roshei Eivarim. So the Gemara answers, Ema, why don't we say that the pasuk Ki Yakeh Klal, right? We're talking about the pasuk that describes the Adon taking out one of the Eivarim of the Eved. And the words Kiyaka are general enough to mean that every Hakah is included in Kiyaka. And therefore, the Eved goes l'cheres. So we open up this parsha with a klal. Kol Hakah b'klal. Then we get to the prat. We have Shein and Ayin. That's called prat. Now, when we have a klal and a prat, the rule is ein beklal l'masha b'frat. So therefore, if it's a klal prat, ein beklal l'masha b'frat. The klal can't go beyond the prat. The prat is coming to restrict the klal. So how do we come up with a prat klal, a klal prat uklal? Because if we're only operating with a klal and a prat, then shein v'ayin in midiach reading low, we're going to have to assume that the Eved does not go free b'roshei eivarim. Why? Because the klal has to be similar to the prat, and the prat is only shein v'ayin. So the Gemara answers, what about the next part of the pasuk? It says, Lachavshi yishalchenu. And that seemed to imply that there are situations in which the Eved is mishtalech lechavshi, is chaz of a klal. Now we have not only a klal uprat, but we have a subsequent klal. And that's going to teach me any aver that's similar to shein v'ayin should be meshachar the aver if he took out that aver. And that's called klal uprat uklal. Yetadana l'keina prat. So it means that we'll have a ribui for anything that's similar to shein v'ayin. So what are the two defining characteristics of shein v'ayin? Maha prat meforash mum shebegoli v'enim chozrim af kol mum shebegoli v'enim chozrim is the Eved goes l'cheres. So that's called the klal prat uklal. So the Gemara asks the following kasha: Ima prat miforosh b'minim shebegolui ubatel mimalachto. So the prat, which is shein and ayin, is something that's golui. Everybody could see that it, whatever, and therefore batel mimalachto. So why is shein v'evel called batel mimalachto? Okay, I understand it's mumim shebegolui. But why is it batel mimalachto? So the answer is, if he's blind, Rahman al-Itzlan, then he can't do the malach. And if he doesn't have a tooth, he can't chew it up properly. The Aver and Choser, if this Aver will never be misrape, and that's going to be the case that's similar to shein v'ayin, is alama tanya tolash biskano v'dildel bo etzem eved yotzi ben lecheres. If you're going to argue that he only goes out lecheres because of bittul malacha, i.e., that he took away that which he needs for malacha, that part of the body, so why is it that we have a brisa that if he rips off his beard, the beard of the Eved, and as a result, dildel bo etzem, I guess maybe one of the, I don't have any commentary on this, but I think he means one of the bones in the jaw maybe got loosened up. Is Eved Yotze ben B'cheres. The brisa is of the opinion that he goes lecheres even though there's no bittul malach. So again, what were the two conditions for shein v'regel? One is that it's irreversible. Oh, and then it was a mum shebegolu. Am I right? Just go over this. Yeah. Mum shebegoli v'einam chozum. And now you're adding bittul malacha. he lost an eye, he can't see properly. If he lost a tooth, he can't chew properly. So these are mumim shebagoli v'yeinu chosum misrape. Hence we have a prat klalu prat. So why not apply the same principle to the bone, the etzem, which is now meduldal as a result of the fact that the Adon, pulled his beard, the beard of the Eved. So why is this not dumya to Shein v'regel? Because now, I'm sorry, Shein v'ayin, because now is saying that Shein v'ayin, if they are removed, that leads to bittul malacha. He doesn't have the capacity to do the work. But this bone, again, I'm going to call it one of the jaw bones, really doesn't contribute, or if it falls away, detract from the malach itself. So why then does it say in the Brisa that ha'eved yotze bohem lecheres? So Gemara answers lachofshi shalchenu ribuihu. It means we're going to darshan the psukim in what's called a riba miut v'riba, because it says ki yaka, and that's a ribu, which includes all ivarim. Then it says shein v'regel, and that's a miut. So we have ribui and we have miut. Now we're going to add another ribui, lachavshi shalchena, which is mashma that anyone who takes out their aver should cause the aver to go free. So this is the drasha of riba umiet v'riba, which allows us to be marbe everything, and we only exclude one thing. So an Eved goes out lecherus even with an Aver she'eno batel mimalachta. So Gemara asks ve'i ribuyahu is afilu iko al yodo v'tzamsa v'sofa lachsa nami. Alo matanya hiko al yodo v'tzamsa v'sofa lachsa ein Eved yotze bohem b'cherus. So if you're going to operate with a ribui, and we're going to darshan the pasuk as a ribui, then we want to include everything. And the Gemara now is vacillating about the following issue. Let's say he hits the Eved, but he doesn't knock off his eye, but rather tzomsa. He translates tzomsa here as yevesha, v'sofa lachsa. And yet, like it's like you have a scab or something like that, eventually it goes back to being healthy skin. Is nami. So there should be a shichur eved, because all the mumim that we have a ribui for, as we said before, where the eved goes free. Al lomatanya. So why does it say in the Brisa Yiko al yodo v'tzomsa v'sofa lachsar ein eved yotze ben lecheres? The Gemara says in Cain, if you're going to be marba all the mumim, is shein v'ayin maya hanile. So if the Eved goes out lecherus with any mum that was caused by the Adon, right? So why did the Torah mention these two Evarim, Shein v'Ayin? It must be the Torah added Shein v'Ayin in order to teach us that any mumim that are similar to Shein v'Ayin, the Ever goes free. And that's called mumim shebagolui v'Einam chozrin. In all cases of Shein v'Ayin Rosh Evarim, Eved Yotze b'Mecherus v'Tzarek et Shichrur. Divrei Rabbi Shimon holds that it's not enough that he took out an Aver, like Shein v'Ayin, but he also has to give him a get Shichrur. And that's going to be matter him, the Eved, to marry a Bas Yisrael. Rabbi Meir Omer Eino Tzarech. There's no need for a get Shichrur. The Torah says he goes free b'Rosh Evarim, and he's now considered like a Jew. So why do we have to give him a get Shichrur? Now the Gemara goes on with the brisa that tells us about another machlokas tanon. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Tzarech get Shichrur. Rabbi Tarfon Omer Eino Tzarech. Rabbi Kiva Omer Tzarech. So basically, this brisa that we're quoting now is bringing support to what we said before. Meaning the machlok shin the Tanakama Rabbi Meir as to whether or not a Yotze b'Rosh Evarim needs to get Shichrur. Now we have something called Hamachriim Lifnei Chacham. So I guess these were outstanding advanced students who sat at the feet of the Chachamim, and they would be Machriya in a machlok. They would try to find some sort of a middle-of-the-road compromise, Shita. Omrim, what do they say? Nirim Divrei Rabbi Tarfon. Right, Rabbi Tarfon held that the Eved doesn't need a Shtar Shichrur. So the Gemara now, this Machriya who comes up with like a middle compromise sheet is going to differentiate between two categories of Rosh Evarim. And then Afkamina is going to be whether you need to get Shichrur to be mater him b'Bas Yisrael. V'shein v'ayin shatorah zochsa lo. So we have Rabbi Tarfon's opinion that the evidence Yotze lecheres the Shichrur with Shein v'ayin, he doesn't need to get Shichrur. But v'nirim divrei Rabbi Akiva, and we want to tip the scale in favor of Rabbi Akiva in an Eved HaYotze b'Shari Varim. So we're now going to differentiate between Shein v'Regel that are explicit in the Torah and Shari Varim which are derived by the Chacham. And therefore, with regard to an Eved who's Yotze b'Shari Varim, Hoil, since Uknas Chachamim hu, if the Rav, the Adon, is mapil one of the Sharei Vari Aguf, the Eved is Yotzi Lecherus, and even though he no longer is Chayv Melach or an Avodah on behalf of his Adon, of his master, but Adainu Tzar gets Shichrur Lahatir b'Bas Yisrael. So this is the machlokes here between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Kiva and the Chacham, but we're going to go through a process of analyzing why there is or is not a necessity of a get Shichrur after he was Yotze b'Rosh Evarim. So the Gemara asks the following question: Knasu? Are you telling me that the reason why he's not Yotze Lecherus in the complete sense is because of a Knas? Valo Kroik Darshina. The pasuk itself tells us that they don't go. I'm sorry, that they are freed from Avdus without a Knas. Ella says the Gemara, what's the Machriim? Hoil umidrash chachamim. The Chacham were the ones who darshaned a ribui miut and ribui to teach us something which is not explicit in the Torah. And therefore, it's not a complete shichur. And you need to get shichur. But Shem v'Regel are explicit in the Torah that the evidence is Yotze Lecherus, and therefore he doesn't need a get shichur if the Adon was guilty of taking out Ivar. So that's going to be the shita of whom? Is that Rabbi Tarfon or Rabbi Akiva? Let me just get this straight. So why does Yotze B'Sharei Varim require a get shichur? Hol midrash chachamim. That doesn't make any sense. He writes here, Harbe Gufei Torah nilmada mikol drosha ve'ein dinim shonim min al mefurash. Is Birah Tosus B'Shem Rabbeinu Tam sheget semid Rabbananu shechoshin shemi yitzaenu bailov b'shuk v'yomerlo avdi atah. Right? If he doesn't give him a get shechur, he's going to say you're my evet, and the spectators will swallow it. They'll buy it into it. But that's only as far as Rosh Varim is concerned, because that's not explicit in the Torah, and people don't know about it. They don't have bekiyas. But in Yitzia B'Shem V'Ayin, since it's explicit in the Torah, we're not going to be choshesh that the Adon will find his evet in the shuk, and he's going to say Avdi Atu. My time with the Rabbi Shimon. What's the logic that underlies Rabbi Shimon, who says that an evet goes out B'Roshi Eivarim, but only with a get shechur to be matir to a bas Yisrael? The Gemara answers Yolef Shiluach me Isha. Ma Isha b'shtar af evet nami b'shtar. So if we want to be matir neshis ish, we need to give her a shtar again. And we have a Gzereshava Shiluach that teaches me that the same din should apply to an evet. And that means that an evet, when he's mishtaleach and he's sent out of the Adon, then it is cheres gemura. And that's going to be bishtar. So that's going to be the logic of Rabbi Meir. I mean, Rabbi Meir holds that an evet is Yotze B'Shem V'Ayin and Rosh Varim, and he doesn't need to get shechur. How will he counter Rabbi Shimon's logic? Because of Chavshi L'Beso. If the Torah had said, not Yishalchenu L'Chavshi, but rather Chavshi Yishalchenu. So again, had it said Yishalchenu lechavshi, one second, just then Kidduka Amrit. Then we would interpret the pasuk as you said it, that if he sends him out with a star, and that's based on the Gzeir Shava to Isha, who is Mishtalech Beget. So all that would have been derived had the pasuk said Yishalchenu lechavshi. Which means that the Adon has to give a star. But Hashta, now if we look at the pasuk, that's not what it says. The Ksiv lachavshi Yishalchenu. So the word chavshi comes before the Shiluah. Is Havilei chavshi meikara. And the pasuk is teaching us that he's chavshi mitchila. Now, it's even before he got the star to be sent away, he's already chavshi. And we're not going to derive from the Gzeir Shava of Shiluchei Shiluach, according to Rabbi Meir, because the Shiluach is effectuating the Shichur, but in a case where you've already effectuated the Shichur through Hotzah B'Shem V'Ayin and Shari Varim, then there's no need for a star. Torah Rabbanan Iko al Eino B'Sima. In other words, he didn't directly knock out the eye, but he gave him a smack, or al Ozno V'Chersha, is Eved Yotzev and Lecherus. That's a big chiddush, meaning even though Lechori didn't do it directly, but nevertheless, indirectly, he took out the ayin or the shein. Now what happens if the Adon hits him when he's standing at a kotel, Kineged Eino, which means that the eye of the Eved is very close to the kotel. So he bangs on the kotel and he scares the Eved, and because of the behol of the Eved, he loses his sight. Eino Roan. Or alternatively, another scenario, if he hits on the kotel, makes such a bang all of a sudden, so then Kineged Ozno, right near the Eved's ears, the Eino Shomeh. So in both cases, we have an indirect kind of a hezek. Eina Eved Yotzei Bahen Lecherus. So if it's on Al Eino or Al Ozno, then he goes Lecherus. But if it's Keneged Eino or Keneged Ozno, then Eina Yotzei Bahen Lecherus. And again, this is all because it wasn't a direct hezek biyadayim, but rather he caused the hezek to his ayin or to his shein. Rav Shama l'Rabbi Ashi l'neimra dekala lav klumhu. Are you saying that if he didn't do it directly onto his eye or onto his ear, then he's eini yotze lecheres because it was the kol, the noise, the bang that caused him to be blind or deaf? And that's not a direct hezek. I'll ask you a kasha, but Tani Rabbi Baruch Yechezkel, Tarnagol Shoshit Rosho Liavra Kli Skuchas V'Takabo Shmoro is Mishalim Nezek Shole. If you didn't guard your little chicken properly, and now it put its head inside the airspace of a glass and started blowing, and making a kol rash gadol, and now as a result the glass broke, it shattered, is mishalim nezik sholem. So we see clearly that a hezek b'kol is considered a hezek. It's not indirect. It's like an extension of him. It's like giri delay, an extension of his body. Or sus tzonaf chamor shenoar v'shavru kele b'toch habayis. I guess it means that the sound was so loud and profound that Kalim actually broke. Is mishalim chatzines. Since he wasn't mazik directly begufo, or I should say begufam in the case of the horse and the chamor, it's only al yodam is therefore mishalmim chatzi kofer. In any event, we learned from this that hezek shenigra machmas kol is considered hezek. So how could the Brisa say above that if the Adon hit him keneged ayin, and as a result of the kol, the Eved can't see anymore, he can't hear anymore, then he's not Yotzi L'Chirus. So we now have a stira. So on the one hand, we're saying as far as Yotzi L'Chirus, kol is not considered a hezek. On the other hand, we see clearly from the Brisa of Rami Bar Yechezkel that kol is considered a hezek. So how do we reconcile this? Omer Rav Ashi responds to Rav Shammon, Shani Adam, the Keva de Bar Dasu, Iu Mivas Nafshe. Don't compare the hezek to an Adam, to that of a hezek of a kol from Kelu. Adam is a bardas. And therefore, if he lost his eyesight, that's because he was scared. And as he's focusing on the kol, he enters into a state of bahola, total confusion. So it means that the person, the human being, participated in bringing about the hezek. And in such a case, we say, but in the case of Kalim, they didn't participate to their own breakage. The kol itself broke them. And that shashmas hakol of the behema is considered like the ma'aser behema, for which he's chayav because of the moment of azek. He owns the animal. Kiddushin, as we learned in the Brisa, mavis is chaver potem b'din b'din shamayim. So if he all of a sudden scares his friend, as a result, the friend suffers damage, then there's only a chiyuv b'dei shamayim. Ketzad taka bi'ozno v'chersho pot. Like this again, the case of groma, where he produces a sound, and the person hears the sound, and he becomes freaked out, so to speak. I hate to use that term, but so that's considered that the nizak participated in the hezek. But achazahu v'tako b'yozno v'chersho. If on the other hand he grabs onto the guy and blows directly into his ears, and the guy becomes deaf, chayah. There was nothing that his friend could do to defend and save himself. The only thing he could do was be damaged. He has no choice because the mazik grabbed him and tied him down, basically. Learned to the Brisa, or al shito v'nadada. What happens if he doesn't blind the Eved, but he puts him into a very bad state, ophthalmology, or he loosens the tooth? So the Brisa says it depends. If he could still see something out of his eye, or he could eat despite the weakness of his tooth, But if, as a result of the hiko, of the hakah, is Eved Yotzei Becherus, because he can no longer use the eyes, and the ears are no longer functional. So again, even though he's still holding on to that tooth, it hasn't fallen off completely, it's still called Yitzia Barashe Varim, because if he would bite into something now, he'd have no tooth to digest it. Tanya, either we have a different brisa. Haresha Haisa Eno Kihuya. The Eved, even before he got smacked by the Adon, was already lokui. In other words, his eyesight was very weak. And Sima, now the Adon made him totally blind. Or, for example, Shino Neduda, he already has a loose tooth before the Adon hit him. And now, as a result of Hiko Adono Hipila, now the tooth came out. If before the Hako was done, they could still use their eyes and their teeth, is Eved Yotzei ben Becherus. Now that since in the pre-Haka state they were able to function and see and chew, and now as a result of your Haka, the Eved can no longer see or hear. And again, initially before the Haka, it was Yachal Ishtamish Bahem, and in that case it's Yotzei Lecherus. But Vim Lav, if even before the Haka, the Eved was not capable of really seeing anything, then Ein Eved Yotzei Lecherus, because the Adon was not Mashlis the Ayin. He wasn't Mapil the Shem, because he was already non-functional even before the Hapolas Shem V'Ayin. Utzricha. And we need both brisos. Diyashmin and Hakamaisa, if we only had the first brisa, we would have thought that only when the Adon hits him, ayin bria, a healthy eye, perfect health, then the Eved is Yotzei Lecherus, mishum to be Kari Nahora Barya, Vashta Nahora Kachisha. Initially, the Eved was able to see, and now he's got a very weak eyesight. So I understand why he's Yotzei Lecherus. But in the case in the second brisa, to make Karanami Nahora Kchisha, even before he got smacked by the Adon, he had very weak eyesight, is Amolo. I would have said that he's not Yotzei Lecherus. V'iyashmin and ha, and if the Tana Kama, if the Tana of the brisa had only taught me the second brisa, we would have said that when is the Yotzei Lecherus Mishum Dis Samuel Legamri, he made him totally blind. Aval Hasam, in the case of the original brisa, Lo Samya Kvar, to Lo Samya Legamri. He weakens his eye, is Amolo. That's not enough to be Yotzei Lecherus Tzricha. We need both brises. Tan Rabbanan Haresha Yerabo Rofe V'Amalo, and the Eved said to his physician, who's also his Adon, Licholo Eno, please put in this kind of refu into my eye. And the Adon actually did this Visima, and the Eved went blind. Here's another scenario. Lachta Loshino. He's a dentist and he's trying to clean up his tooth, like what we call the hygienist, the pila. And he inadvertently knocked off the tooth. Another case. Sichek biadon. V'yatzel lecherus. So again, what's sichek bi'adon? He played a trick on the master. V'yatzel lecherus. So I'm going to stop here because this brisa I don't understand, and Belinetta will pick this up tomorrow. We almost finished the daf, and I'll wish you a wonderful day, wonderful evening. Thank you so much.